Hello, hello. Welcome back to episode 2, you guys. Episode 2 of the Let's Talk About It podcast. I am your host, Leah Suzette Newmoff, and I'm excited to be back with you guys today. And this week, we are going to be talking about goals and goal setting. I love a goal. I always have a goal going on, something that I'm trying to achieve. And it was interesting. I kind of heard a statistic recently that I think it's 65, 75% of Americans don't actually have goals. And I was like, what? You guys, let's strive for some stuff. So that's what we're talking about this week. And I am going to be talking about that more thoroughly just throughout the week in the Full Circle Wellness community. And if you're not familiar with the Full Circle Wellness community, it is something that I have pulled together just as an extension of this podcast. This podcast is an extension of that, however you kind of want to look at that. And it's a private Facebook community, and I will absolutely link that out in the show notes. So if you want to check that out and join us, that'll be in the link. And you can also find the Full Circle Wellness website. Full Circle Wellness is like a framework that I put together of sort of like a health and wellness model that I built out of my own healing journey. And it is something that I'm really passionate about. And it's part of why I'm doing this podcast and where I'm coming from with all of this. And it's about just sort of being well in the mind, body, and spirit, and how all of that kind of works together. And I think when we are fully well, as I would say, we have bigger goals. I think things start to come out of us oh man, I've always wanted to do X, Y, and Z, and maybe I can. Maybe I can make the time for that. Maybe I can give myself that self-care. Maybe I can chase those dreams. Maybe it's running a marathon. Maybe it's writing a book, starting a business, shifting careers, becoming a parent. Whatever your goals are, I think it's super important that we have them. And this week and in this episode, we're going to talk about creating a mission, creating a vision, going for your goals, strategies and kind of tactics, and then just sort of the mindset. We talked about mindset last week in a lot of detail, but I think there's a little more we can just kind of squeeze in this week in reference to goal setting and creating goals for yourself and just striving to be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. We are back in the studio, and I've got notes and I've got my water and I am ready to go for you guys. So let's get this conversation started, okay? I love it. All right. So setting goals. I think when we are setting goals, one of the very first things that we have got to kind of do, right, and just kind of tap into is creating a vision of who we want to be. Okay. And not just who you want to be. Don't just be, oh, I want to be a doctor. Oh, I want to be a podcast host. Oh, I want to be a marathon runner. Whatever it is, go so beyond that. Who do you want to be inside and out? How do you want to feel? That's a super, super important part of this. How do you want to feel? How do you want to show up for your job, for yourself, for your partner, kids, your friends, your family? How do you want to present yourself to the world? How do you want to dress? How do you want to talk? How do you want to take care of yourself? There's so much that goes into thinking about who we want to be and creating a vision for, okay, who do I want to become a year from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now? And I'll be straight, I got this practice from Rachel Hollis. Again, I know you guys are going to hear me talk about her because I just love her work, but there was a book of hers that she wrote. It's Girl Stop Apologizing. And she talks about, kind of setting goals and just slaying a lot of the excuses that we give ourselves as to why we can't achieve things. But it is one of the first times that I kind of sat down and created a vision of okay, who is it that I want to be in 10 years? And it was okay, well, I kind of want to be a parent. I think I want to have children. I want to work for myself. I want to have a podcast. I want to, it would be cool to run a half marathon. It would be cool to still be doing my art. And I just started thinking of all these things. I want to be in shape. I want to be a really good friend. I want to be, super present. So my love language is quality time spent. So being present with people, being present in my own life is sort of a, okay, that's how I want to show up in the world. But just creating this vision of who you want to be. And then just deciding how to break that down into like, okay, if I'm gonna become, for instance, a marathon runner, we'll start with that. I have always wanted to do a half marathon, not even a whole marathon, you guys, a half marathon. I just want to get through the 13.1 and say that I crossed the finish line, whether I ran it, walked it, or just kind of mixed it up in both and did both, right? Something that I've always wanted to do. But in order to get there, who would I have to become? What would I have to do? I wish I had like an actual audience and somebody could raise their hand and be like, you have to actually start walking and running. Like, oh yes, you're so right. So if I want to actually cross the finish line and finish those 13.1 miles, I've got to walk 1 mile. I've got to walk 3, and then I've got to walk 5 and 7 and 9. And it's like, you have to actually get off the couch and start doing the training to do something like that, and not just walk, but maybe start to work on your pacing, start to work on your strength training so that you have stronger muscles to get you to move faster, move longer. There's a lot that goes like into that. And I think, and I know this was definitely me, so it has to be other people. I'm not alone in this. I think when you have a really big vision like that and you start to break it down and you're like, yeah, but I would have to actually get off the couch, and like I would have to actually try to run a 5K. Like if I wanted to do 13, I would actually have to, and it starts to become like, oh my God, that's daunting. I can't do that, right? You think to yourself like you can't, and you immediately shut yourself down and think like, oh, I'm gonna never be able to do this many miles, and I can't get off the couch because I don't have the time, and I'm always tired after work, or the kids, or the spouse, or the whatever, and you set yourself up with all of these excuses and all of these reasons as to why you can't, and you end up failing because you never even try. And guys, I'm judging no one here, because that has been me for like the longest time. Like it did not take, it was not an overnight thing for me to get to a place where I can like show up and sit down and work on the dream of doing like a video podcast and like learning how to do all these things, or trying to build a community, or like even just the job that I have now. Like it took so much work just to shift out of, I know we talked about last week, the real estate job that I had when I like got out of college. It was like a lot to even just shift, because of course when you're trying to go into a really specific career, sometimes a degree is not enough. They want, to see that you have experience, but it's like, you got to get the job to get the experience. It's this catch-22. So it's a lot of self-learning and proving, I think, that you can teach yourself and learn something and just dive into a process. So we talked last week about that process mindset, right? That like, it's gonna take time. It doesn't happen overnight. So whatever the goal is, whether it's running the marathon or starting the business, or whatever your goal is for yourself, it doesn't happen overnight. And you have to settle into the process and the time that's gonna take to get there. And the thing I want to touch on with that I think is like the most important, and I kind of had this in my head as a mantra when I really started my own journey, particularly with healing. And this is before I kind of started getting more into the health and wellness, before I could even tackle, for instance, fitness or nutrition or doing like more for myself. I had to get right mentally. I had so much going on and so much kind of weighing me down, and a lot of like childhood trauma stories that I was holding on to. I had no concept of IFS parts, and we talked about that a little bit. And it was just like a lot of work that I had to do internally to get out of a place where I felt like I was not lovable, that I was not good enough, that I wasn't even worthy of doing the work to work on myself. I think that is such a foundational thing. And during our 8-week session in the Full Circle Wellness community, again, those aren't here on the YouTube video. If you want to check those out, you would have to get into the Facebook group. But we did a talk on mental health, and we talked about how mental health is so foundational to doing any of this kind of internal work. It's like the precursor to even like doing any kind of mindset work. If you need, for instance, a therapist, then you have to get a therapist. Like there's really no way around that. Like if you're holding on to trauma stories, if you find yourself repeating a lot of the same patterns or making a lot of the same types of friends where it's like, oh, this person betrayed me, and then like you drop them out of your life, and then you're like, oh my God, I have this new best friend, and then, oh, this person betrayed me too. You have to start asking yourself like, why is it that you're attracting that to you? And a lot of that is going to come from work that you would do internally. Or why am I constantly in this pattern of finding jobs that don't work out for me, or putting myself in situations where I'm depleted and exhausted and burning out because I'm just like giving. And some of that comes from, again, like trauma stories, stuff that you've got to work on internally. I know a lot of people fall into the people pleasing trap. I don't, we'll call it a trap. It's not even a trap. I think it's trauma, honestly. Like, I too have been the people pleaser where I wanted to just make sure that everyone else around me was good. Everything else around me was running smoothly, and it didn't matter that I was depleted or running out of energy, and it didn't matter that my cup was empty as long as everybody else was good and nobody was fighting and all the arguing was like, shh, right? Like, I just didn't want anything going wrong around me, so I would burn myself out at the expense of others, like burning your fire to keep each other warm. I know that's a lyric in a song somewhere by like the Chainsmokers. I actually love that song, and if I knew what it was right now, I would tell you. Maybe it doesn't matter. Setting fires, keeping you warm, it's a good song. And I think that when you are trapped in doing stuff like that, it's so crucial that you do the foundational internal work to start filling your own cup, which is 100% what my Full Circle Wellness model is about. It's about getting your cup full, because when your cup is full, you can pour into others, whether that's your family or a job or your children or friends or whatever it is. And you can start going after goals. It may be, again, goals, any goal, like traveling goal, fitness goal, wellness goal, career goals, like whatever kind of goals you've got going on, your cup has got to be full to start chasing those goals. So there is like foundational work that you've got to do before you start doing the whole, okay, break this down step by step, you eat an elephant one bite at a time, et cetera, et cetera. Because when goals feel so big and so overwhelming, I don't know about you, but when I was at the very beginning of my journey and I've always had these dreams, right? I've always had this dream of like being a we'll say like a famous artist, which is clearly not going to happen, you guys, but doing podcasting, writing a book, running a business, being an entrepreneur, like I've always had these really big goals on my heart. But to think about chasing those goals when I was basically still in a survival state, dealing with trauma that I didn't even know, like I didn't even know to call it trauma yet until I started working with therapists. That kind of stuff is just like, pardon me scratching my eye, you guys. Until you kind of get to a place where you can do that kind of work, if you start thinking about those big goals, it's just going to overwhelm you, which is what it would do to me. I would think like, God, I'm not there yet, and I'm never going to get there. And I would have to take all these steps, and it would overwhelm me. It would shut me down. It would put me in a state of shame, because then I started thinking, well, why am I not good enough to get myself up off the couch? Or why am I not good enough to have the willpower to say no to the donuts in the office? Or whatever the thing was, there was a lot of shame wrapped around like all of those little things, right? Whatever it is that I wanted to do, why am I stuck in this job? Why am I not like better? There are people who are younger than me doing bigger things than me. Like there's a lot of that comparison that comes out. There's a lot of shame that can be wrapped up in all of these areas if you haven't done the internal work. Those kinds of goals, thinking about the things that you really want to do. It's great to have goals. I'm seriously, have a goal, you guys. Get the goal, make the list. But if it starts to overwhelm you, take a step back and start to think about like, do I need to do internal work before I start trying to chase those goals? Yes. So now that we've kind of covered that like baseline foundational stuff, we're going to talk about getting the goals achieved. Okay. So like I said, you start with a vision, you create the goal, and then you start asking yourself, what kind of steps would I need to take to get there? We talked about the marathon. I would actually have to get out of the house, walk the miles, improve the miles, improve on the distance, improve on the time, maybe start picking up the pace into a run. If I actually want to run the marathon, I have to take the steps to do the thing. And so the mantra that I kind of like touched on, if you guys know me at all, I'm going to try to get better at this. That's why I'm bringing notes to the table. But if you know me, like personally know me, you know that I will get off on a tangent real fast. So we're going to circle back to the mantra that I talked about and didn't bring up. And that mantra was this: Small right actions. I got it from Gabby Bernstein. I think I brought the book up last week, Happy Days. She talks about taking small right actions. So I'm going to talk about a goal that I had for myself at the beginning, and the goal was simple. The goal was this. Well, the goal was simple, but it was not simple at all. The goal was, and I wrote it down every day as if it was something that I had already done. And the goal is, I healed my childhood trauma and found inner peace. Because I knew that if I wanted to, like I kind of talked about, do that internal work, I was never going to work on the fitness, work on the nutrition, figure out how to tackle my finances, improve my relationships with others, improve my job situation. I was never going to be able to do any of that if I did not first get the internal work done, do the mental health work, heal my childhood trauma, and find inner peace. So my goal became a feeling. It became, I don't want to feel super depressed, and I don't want to feel super anxious, and I don't want to feel like I'm stuck in a trauma story, and I don't want to feel dragged down by things that I can't let go of, and resentments that I'm holding on to, and the blame that I want to place on the world around me. I want to be at peace. I want to take responsibility for myself and my own life. And that peace became the thing that I focused on. And that became the goal, which is actually like a totally lofty goal. Right? Like I say, like, this is just the goal, but it was a totally lofty goal because so many steps go into healing your childhood trauma and finding inner peace. Again, that's something you don't do overnight. So I knew right out of the gate that I was gonna need to get back into therapy. And I think a thing that I hear from a lot of people, and it was a thing that I always said, was, oh, I can't afford that. Guys, I just can't afford that. That's so expensive. Medical insurance doesn't cover that shit. Therapy is like out the ass. Like, there's no way. I just can't afford it. I can't afford it. So I'm coming in with excuses right out of the gate. I suspended that disbelief and I said, okay, I need to do this. So I just kind of put that out into the universe. So the answer now just becomes how then? If not this way, what way? So I started to look for the possibilities, ask myself how, instead of just right out of the gate saying like, I can't afford that. No, I might think that I can't, maybe I can. How do I figure it out? And actually the thing that came into my life, and I recommend this for anyone, I tell everybody about it, all my friends, my family, BetterHelp is the therapy app that I use. And I recommend that to anybody who's feeling like they can't afford therapy. Because here's the thing. I don't know about your health insurance, but my health insurance, they'll cover a couple of visits with a therapist. I think it's like up to 6 visits. And I'm like, honey, you do not heal trauma in 6 visits with a therapist. It takes 6 visits for the therapist to get to know who the fuck you are, okay? Like, you don't heal shit in 6 visits. So I don't know what these medical insurance companies are thinking. Actually, I do know what they're thinking. They're thinking that they want to make a lot of money. And I'm just like, well, I don't care about what you need. I care about what I need. And what I need is a therapist to help me get through this shit. So I need something that I can afford. And I knew that trying to do that in an office using insurance wasn't going to work. So what I liked about BetterHelp was that I could pay out of pocket, and I just had to adjust my budget a little bit. I had to drop a few things. Like, I had to maybe cut back on eating out. I had to like kill the Netflix. Like, I had to just be like, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to buy all these extra sweaters that I don't need this month. Oh, maybe I can't go to this concert next week. Like, whatever it is, it was more important to me that I make the room in my budget to pay the, like, I think it was, I want to say it was $250 a month for a weekly visit and then constant contact with your therapist via like a text messaging system. And you could go in and create journal entries within the app that they have, schedule appointments, all kinds of stuff. And then like, if your therapist was going to go out on vacation, like, you wouldn't get charged for that week. It would like push your billing out, which was always nice. So I really liked that app. I really loved the therapist that I found. And then the way that we did therapy was basically like a Zoom call. Like, it was just right here. It was just via camera. And through that, we did internal family systems. We did meditative practices. We did talk therapy. We even did eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is, she would kind of do this thing with the fingers where you would like I would watch her fingers go back and forth. And then we would do like a what's coming up for you session. And we would do this for like 45 minutes. And seriously, you guys, If you ever have a chance to do EMDR, I totally recommend it. It's really fantastic for healing trauma, but I will say that the work is incredibly exhausting, physically and emotionally. I would get done with that and I would have cried and I would have laughed and I would have gotten angry and I would have been like, why am I thinking about that? That's weird. I'd be confused. Like, there was just so much emotion that came out of doing EMDR. But at the end, it really was one of those things that helped me heal on a really, really deep level. And then she taught me all kinds of stuff about, like, we did like emotional freedom tapping, where you do like a tapping process across your face. There are like meridian points that you tap when you do that. We did all kinds of things like that. And we just did it via Zoom. So I'm not an ad partner. I wish. BetterHelp, give me a call. We can do that one day. That would be great. Maybe when I'm like popular. You guys have to help make me popular, okay? And then I can just like give BetterHelp to everybody. You can get like a free week or something. I don't know. But I love to recommend BetterHelp because it actually served me greatly. And I'm sure there's somebody out there who has had a bad experience and maybe they would recommend Talkspace, or maybe they do recommend in-office therapy. Everybody's got their thing. My thing was BetterHelp. That worked for me. So at the end of the day, all I mean to say is that if you need therapy, do not sell yourself short. Do not tell yourself, oh, I can't afford it. I beg you, just if you feel like you really need that, especially if you are feeling depressed or suicidal, please get help. If you need help, please get help. Do not tell yourself that you can't get help. And that's going to be that first thing that you do. And then from there, you start to achieve the goals. It's not that simple. Okay, so I got through doing all of that. And then what I kind of learned, especially with my therapist, but then also I learned this from Tony Robbins. I kind of learned a little bit of this from Rach. Gabby Bernstein is another person who talks about this. There is this concept, right, that if you have, do, be. Like, I want to have this thing so I can do X, Y, and Z, and then I'll be happy, lovable, like whatever the thing is that you're wanting, right? And it's actually the opposite. And I think we talked about this a little bit last week. You have to sort of figure out a way to embody what you're looking for ahead of time to be that sort of like future version of yourself now, which is confusing because you're thinking, well, like, how am I supposed to be happy when I'm not happy? Like, I can't just pull happiness out of my ass. And you're super right. But you get there by doing small right actions. We talked about that. Small right actions. That became like the mantra. Small right actions daily, consistently, day in and day out. So that's how you eventually reach a goal, change the state of being. It is the day in, it's the day out. It's kind of like the slog, right? It's just showing up, not giving up, and doing this every single day. So for me, when it was that big goal of I healed my childhood trauma and found inner peace, I had to ask myself, like, okay, what things are going to get me there realistically, whether they are hard or not? And for me, those things looked like taking a walk daily, because my therapist was like, you need sunlight, you need to get outside, you need to breathe fresh air, have like a meditative experience with walking. So it became a daily walk, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And eventually, honestly, it just became more like 30 to 45 minutes because I just like walking and I love being outside. So walking, she had me start a meditation practice right away. So that was like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. Like, I can't meditate. Like, what, you guys, meditation? I can barely get my mind to shut off. Like, what? How am I supposed to meditate? You guys, I'm telling you, I swear on my meditation practice now. I meditate either in the morning or at night. A lot of times it's before bed. I love doing tapping before bed. It really calms my body and it really calms my nervous system to do a tapping, especially on my chest. I love tapping this meridian here. That's just me. But I think also because it stimulates the vagus nerve, which runs like from the back of the head down the spine, and you're sending that vibration kind of like straight into the vagus nerve. There's a lot of science that actually goes behind this. It's not just like some woo-woo, I'm gonna tap and it's gonna make me feel better. Like, there's a lot of science behind why tapping works to calm the nervous system, and it works a lot for anxiety, but it also worked for me for having depression. So it was just a whole thing. So doing stuff like that, but doing it daily. Even if I didn't feel like it, even if I thought, oh my God, this is weird, or like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. Like, I'm just so triggered by something today, doing it anyway. And then having a journal practice was something that was also like, okay, I got to do this at least a couple times a week. But within, like I said, within the BetterHelp system, they have like a digital journal. So you can just go in and type, whether it's on your phone or on the computer. So it was kind of nice that not only was I journaling for me, I was kind of journaling for my therapist. So there was a little bit of that accountability there. And I knew that she was going to be able to read that. So she can also like gain insights into what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling in order to better help me. Haha, that's probably why they named the app BetterHelp, you guys. So I did, but I would still write in my physical journal because that's always something that has helped me, just taking my hand to something. That's, I think, part of why art is such a spiritual practice for me. I got really heavily into my painting at that time, just creating whatever I felt like creating. I've always been an abstract painter, so to be able to take what's going on in here and get it out of my system and onto canvas, that was also an incredible practice for me. And then just talking, opening up about this stuff more. It's funny because I'm like such a talker and I love to talk about mental health and I love to talk about like, oh, what am I feeling and like all of this stuff. But I didn't realize how much I was actually like shutting down and not sharing any of that with anyone until I started talking to my therapist. And I was like, you know what, I don't even tell, my partner about this because I thought to myself, if I share these things, I'm a burden, that I'm not lovable enough to share the things that are going on deep inside of me. And when I kind of got over that and started doing my therapeutic work, it was another one of those steps that I took more often, that when something came up, I spoke instead of like holding it inside. And this went on and still goes on daily in my life. And I have absolutely healed that childhood trauma and found that inner peace because I took the small right actions and still take the small right actions daily. And then for another example for you guys, I want to do this podcast. We're calling it a podcast. It's like a video podcast, YouTube channel, whatever. I still definitely don't have this like on Spotify or anything like that. But you guys, partner Boo, he gave me his webcam and his Yeti because he used to do streaming and he kind of hated it. So he gave me his equipment, and I'm going to be getting set up with that this week. So next week's video might look a little bit better than this one, might sound a little bit better than this one. And if that's like jive turkey, then I think we'll figure out how to get it onto Spotify, and then maybe start figuring out how to do some edits and stuff so you guys don't have to sit here and watch me like scratch my nose or fix my glasses or flip my hair. So we'll get better over time. And that's it. It's getting better over time. That's the whole point of this conversation. When it comes to having a goal, I want to have like a juicy, like well-produced podcast, but I have to start somewhere. I have to get used to sitting in front of a camera weekly, chatting with you guys, talking about it, putting it on the gram, putting it out on social, kind of like learning about the marketing and the branding. And like, that's all like foreign to me to some extent. I did a lot of marketing stuff when I was at that real estate office, but it was for real estate. And it's, I promise you, not quite the same. The sort of bonus that I have in my life is that I'm a graphic designer, so I can do absolutely all of my graphics work, and I'm good at writing copy. So like I can do that kind of stuff. But other than that, I'm like, oh my God, this is foreign. Like, when do I post? What do I post? Where do I post it? Do I put it on my story? Do I put it on my wall? What's supposed to be on the wall? Like, should everything be the same color? Like, there's a lot that goes into this, and I'm just like learning as I go. But the point is that if I want to even get to the goal being having sort of like a poppin' podcast, you guys, where everything is jive turkey and we're like going strong, and we've got, I don't know, what do you, like sponsors or whatever, I don't know what you see. I don't even know where that comes in. I don't know what that's called. But when you get this idea that's on your heart, you go for it. You get brave. You just muster up that courage to sit down in front of the camera and start, because if you don't start and start taking those small right actions, those tiny actions to get to the end goal, you'll never get there. It's fun to create a vision board, right? And I've got a vision board, you guys. I actually did mine in Photoshop because, like I said, I have my design tools and I actually don't have a lot of magazines, so it's not like I had anything to cut out of. But I was like, okay, I'm going to go on Pinterest. I'm going to create a vision board. And then I just like clipped and saved some of those images and created like a, sort of poster situation. I actually did print it out and hang it up. But the thing is, if you print that and you're focused on those end goals and you're just like, yeah, I want to be a psycho bar instructor. I want to speak fluent German. I want to do a homestead. Like, I'm talking about my own goals here, so just I'm putting that out in the universe. I'm shooting my shot. You guys are hearing the shot. I'm shooting it. The podcast, all the things. Like, I want to be strong, and I want to be, like, doing all of these things. If I'm only focused on the end and not taking the steps to get there, and not doing the small right actions, it actually depletes you. Because like I said, if you aren't in a place where you feel good about going for those goals, that end goal is just going to drag you down, because you're going to start thinking, damn, I'm not there yet. You're going to have that gap versus gain mindset. Another really good book. I can't think of the author right off the top of my head, but the book is called The Gap and the Gain, and it talks about this idea of like measuring yourself against where you are versus where you want to go, which is the gap. You're thinking, damn, like I've got this huge gap, this huge chasm to get to where I want to go. So using this podcast as an example, I'm sitting on my floor of my studio filming this on my phone, and I want to be in a nice little home production studio with all the like production quality and the intro music and like maybe the subtitles, and I don't know. But it's like, I'm thinking, damn, I could either let that get me down and think, damn, that's a huge chasm to cross, or I can think of the gain, where I am versus where I was. And where I was even just a few months ago was like, I could not even put my phone like on the tripod, turn on the camera, be comfortable looking at myself doing this. Like, oh God, like it was just, oh God, like it was so stressful for me. And I'll admit, like even today, like even just coming up here, getting ready to do this, my heart starts to race a little bit and I start to get out of breath, and I'm like, okay, couple of deep breaths, hit play. Like I just have to calm down a little bit, because that sort of like stage fright has always just been something that I get, because I just get wrapped up in the perfection. And I actually, tangent for you guys, I told you I love a tangent. Back when I was in college, I had a speech class. Like I had to do, you put together like a little speech, and then they get longer as the semester goes on, and you have to get up, and like sometimes there's a slideshow and sometimes it's just you speaking. And my God, you guys, I would just like, okay. And then my trick actually just became to take the glasses off, because I was like, oh, if I take the glasses off, I can't see them. So I don't have to think about what they're thinking. And that became my like trick for getting up in front of the class, because I was like, oh my God, people are looking at me. Like I can't. Fortunately, no one is looking at me when I do this, except for me. And then I just know in the back of my mind that several people are probably gonna watch this if they care enough to see me chat with them. And that gets me a little bit in those like public speaking feels. But anyway, the gain that I have is that I'm now sitting here doing it. So it's like you have to kind of like, almost like that space of gratitude. Think about like, how far have you come, not how far yet you have to go. I think about too this sort of like mountain that I've talked about climbing, right? The healing of the childhood trauma, the finding of the inner peace, that took almost 2 years just to get my mental health right, just to get to a place where I could take care of myself, fill my own cup, speak my needs, and like give myself what I needed in order to take care of my fitness, take care of my nutrition, again, start taking care of like my finances, because even my finances were in the gutter, which is why finances is one of my like 8 pie slices in the Full Circle Wellness model, because when your finances are shit, it basically is going to have a real drag on your mental health. At least it did for me. I have to imagine that other people feel that way, looking at like credit card debt and like having heart palpitations because you're like, oh my God, where did it all go wrong? But like, it took that internal work to even get to a place where I could apply tactics. And actually, again, I did a talk on that. We did a video on that. So if you're interested, Facebook group, you guys, I'm going to link it out in the show notes. Just hop on over there. Those videos are only in the Facebook, because that was me practicing for this. So they're not nearly as good, and they're also vertical facing. So I was trying to learn all kinds of things. But I think the conversations are good. So you should definitely check them out. Yeah. So achieving starts with being. Embodying feeling. I talked about Tony Robbins and his idea on state, story, and strategy. You start with your state of being, your physicality, And then you tell yourself your story. You have to believe, we talked about this last week with the mindset. You have to believe that these things are possible for you. And then you start implementing strategies. And that's kind of what I was talking about with the financial thing for me. I had to get to a place where I was like, okay, this debt doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. It just means that I didn't understand and something went wrong, and it doesn't make me unlovable or not enough or any of that. Understanding that it was all good. And then the sort of conversation that I had with money, I had to stop saying things like, oh, there's never enough, and, money is evil, and this sort of, oh, money doesn't grow on trees, like all the stuff that we typically tell ourselves about money, or having an idea that it's a limited resource and that there's not enough out there and there's not enough to go around and all the rich people are evil. And it's like, when you have those kinds of stories that you're telling yourself, it's gonna F up the way that you approach going after any kind of goal. And my goal at the time was just to get out of credit card debt. Like, I just needed to deal with that and handle that. And it took me getting my state right, changing my story in order to start implementing strategies and tactics to actually do that. And so excited to say that we did that in January. So credit card debt free, you guys. So exciting. Anyway, when you get into a state of being able to tackle your goals, you're going to be thinking, oh my God, I've got these huge goals. It's like more exciting and less daunting because you're thinking, I'm just excited to get into this process. And that's where I'm at now. And I really want to share that with you guys and get you into the same mindset of get excited about the process. I don't care that this video looks kind of bad, you guys. I'm getting to do this. I'm just chasing after a dream. I think what I'm sharing is important information as somebody who is experiencing these things, living these things, sharing this information. That's what became important for me on my journey, hearing it from other people. And if those people hadn't had the courage to talk about it on their shows or in their books or on their websites, I never would have gotten the information. So just being able to show up, being able to say, I get to do this. I get to sit here and do this. I'm making the time for this. And the same thing goes with, for instance, physical fitness. So I have a big story there. I have always had issues with my weight. Ever since I was a little kid, I was always kind of chunkier than the other girls in school, and it always dragged me down because it was the early 2000s and everybody on TV was rail thin with bone straight hair, and your girl had a little extra meat, and my hair's always been this curly. So I was not exactly the cover of Teen Beat magazine. And I was like, something's wrong with me. I'm imperfect. And all the other girls in my class look great. And I had one of my very best friends, she developed early, and all the boys were like, oh my God, haha, they like her. And I was just like, something's wrong with me. And it's I think as little girls, especially as preteens, we just totally internalize that. And it's not healthy. I'm so glad to see society trying to shift away from that. I see a lot more body positivity out there now than I did growing up. So I hope, obviously I'm not a teenager anymore and I can only speak from having my life experience, but I hope these teen girls are out there seeing better stuff these days and not internalizing the kinds of things that I was internalizing. But all that to say, I was always thinking about oh, I got a diet, or I really need to exercise. And it was always coming from a place of shame. It was always I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, and I need to change, which we talked about this, or I talked about this in another video that's in the group, wherever I talked about it, but you cannot shame yourself into change. You have to love yourself through an evolution. So you can't be berating yourself to get something done. And my whole sort of, preteen, adolescent, young adulthood was just steeped in that shame that there's something wrong with me, that I have to change because there's something wrong with me. There was no self-love there. It was a lot of self-hatred. And that's why I was never able to actually make those changes, because I was way too young to recognize that I needed to do any kind of internal work. No one else in my life was doing internal work. That wasn't something that was talked about or being modeled for me in any way. It was something I had to figure out as an adult, oh man, I should probably go to therapy and work on this. And now I am loving myself through an evolution of here's what my body gets to do. Here's how I can celebrate moving my body. And a lot of that came from we're going to circle back around because, like I said, I love to get on a tangent. The big thing that happened to me was breaking a leg. In 2021, I had finally kind of gotten my shit together. Like, I did this whole thing online called Fit Girls. It was like recipes, workouts, like whatever. And I finally started to see myself like lose weight, build some consistency, and actually start to enjoy it. And I was only like maybe like a month and a half in. And me and Boo were like, okay, we're gonna start riding bikes together, and like mountain bikes, not just like bicycles on the street. Like, he's really into mountain biking. He's got a nice like mountain bike, and he was like, I'm gonna get you a mountain bike. So we're talking about like not a cheap bike, you guys. This is like freaking expensive bike. So he gets me the bike, and I'm like, yeah, we're gonna get into this sport. It's gonna be so cool. And then the first time we go out into the woods, I am literally like shaking, like gasping, having a heart attack, thinking about all the things that could go wrong. We're talking about like a little like 5-degree slope, and I'm like spazzing because as if I'd never ridden a bike before, right? Like, when I was a kid, I'm riding a bike everywhere, but all of a sudden I'm an adult and I'm on a bike and I'm like, I'm gonna die. So I like had all these issues surrounding this idea that like I'm gonna break a limb out here in these woods. And we practiced hitting the brakes and doing the things, and then I started to get like a little bit comfortable, and we went out like another time. It was Saturday, October 14th, shortly after noon, and we were riding through these trails. And these trails, you guys, these trails by my house are marked as easy. They are not easy. I don't know who decided that. These things are like deep into this little bridge with like it's a whole thing. So we go out that day. I was still kind of getting a little comfortable, but then we come down this hill and I just spazzed. Everything went out of my brain. I like let go of the bike. My foot goes like over here, and I hit this tree and I shatter my tibial plateau. If you don't know what that is like the top of the leg bone. So like the top of the leg bone where like the knee connects. Patella, tibial plateau, femur, right? And this shatters. And I was just like, I mean, obviously I didn't know that until all of the CAT scans and the x-rays later, but I was like, I broke my leg. Like, I know that I broke this. And if it's not broken, it's dislocated, but I'm pretty sure that it's broken because I heard like this massive like crack when I hit that tree. Although I think in hindsight, it was actually maybe the tree also breaking, because I'm pretty sure I snapped the tree. But the tree was like, you guys, like a little tree, but not like a tree, but like anyway, I hit this thing. I go down into this ravine. I'm rolling, covered in the burrs, like I'm just dirt, scrapes, everything. And we get me back up on the trail. And so fortunately, this couple comes by and they help me get like out of the woods. So it's like this dude I don't know and Greg, and we're doing this thing, and I'm hopping on one leg, and it took us like an hour. It's like 95 degrees outside. We finally get me to the hospital, and of course, you know, the ER takes a million years. And then I spent 11 days in one of those like leg straightening, like it keeps your legs straight cast situation. And obviously I immediately couldn't walk on it because it was just shattered. So I had to wait in line for the trauma surgeon to get an open reduction internal fixation, which is where they open, reduce the bones back together, and then internally fixate with plates and screws. So I had this whole thing go down, and that experience, I wanted to say so badly, why me? Why me? Why now? But here's the point that I'm wanting to make after telling you that lovely little story there. I don't know if it was like angels, or it was my guides, or if it was God, the universe, whatever. But that whole time that I spent on the couch, I just kept getting this idea and this message in my mind that this wasn't happening to me, it was happening for me. And it was happening, in hindsight, it was happening to teach me that being able to move is a celebration of my body. It's not a punishment. Exercise is not a punishment. Exercise does not come out of shame. Exercise is a celebration of what I get to do. I get to walk. This is like an ability that not everybody has. I lost my leg for, I think it was like 4 or 5 months, and then I had to do my physical therapy. So of course, not, you know, pretty imperfect walking, but it was a full like 18 weeks before the bone was even like sealed back together and I could actually put weight on it. So I had to use crutches, and that I was bound to the first floor of my home. I live in a 3-story condo. So I was just bound to the first floor of my home, had to have Greg helped me to the bathroom for like 3 or 4 weeks. Like, it was just, I cried. It was horrible. And I thought to myself, like, this isn't even that bad. Like, I'm going to be down for a couple of months. There are people who go to Iraq and come back with no leg, and this is their life forever. Like, this is going to go away. This is going to heal. And at that point, I realized exercise is something that I get to do. And now it's become something that I'm like, okay, well, what can I do next? Like, I started to actually sink into that idea, that mindset shift of like process. Building muscle takes time. You can't just pick up a plate and squat a plate. You've got to start with 45. Like, you've got to start with the bar. Like, I wanted to start cycling again, not on the mountain bike. I go to a cycling studio and do spin, which I'm obsessed with. And I do actually want to be a spin instructor. And I've been working really hard on building up that endurance, because you have to be able to like talk and ride at the same time. And I'm just a little bit of an asthmatic. So I just like, working on that, working on the strength in my legs to be able to do that, because there's a lot of sort of like physical requirements. So it's like, now I celebrate that. Like, and the thing is too, when it comes to physical exercise, I talked about this in a chat that we did on physical exercise. I'm just gonna keep going back to the chats, you guys. Join the Facebook group, get in the community, go check out the chats from Full Circle Wellness Week. We did 8 weeks, 6 videos, because I combined fitness and nutrition and I combined purpose, work, and finances like together. So there's 6 videos instead of 8, but really good conversations. And anyway, cycling. So I go because I love it. Like, when it comes to fitness, find something you love. Don't just like push yourself to do something that you hate. Like, if you hate running, walk. If you hate lifting weights, do resistance bands. If you don't even like doing that, do just body weight stuff. It doesn't matter. You have to enjoy it. And once you learn to enjoy the process, reaching those goals, whatever the goal is, whether it's like physical fitness, like I was talking about, or becoming the cycling instructor, or, running the marathon, or starting the podcast, or writing a book, or directing a movie, or whatever it is, whatever the goal is, when you learn to enjoy the process and you learn to enjoy and sort of just like lean into taking those small right actions and trusting that those small right actions are going to get you there. So with the health and wellness example, when I started trying to like heal trauma and like find inner peace, I absolutely trusted that my therapist was guiding me in the right direction, right? So I wasn't just like, okay, I'm just gonna, meditation, like I hate this. It was like, I'm gonna trust this process. I'm working with a professional. Tons of people meditate. Maybe this feels weird right now, and it did. It felt weird in the beginning. Now I love it. Now it really like calms me. But in the beginning, it was like I had to just lean into trusting that small right action, and that taking those small right actions was gonna get me to where I wanted to go. Because it's like, in the beginning, like I said, in the beginning, I felt like I wasn't even worth the work. Some kind of months into my therapy, I ended up like totally breaking down and sharing that with my therapist, that like, after having taken several small right actions, like I was doing the work, I finally got to a place where I felt like, wow, I'm worth this work. I'm worthy of this. Like, I deserve to be able to take care of myself and not be living with anxiety and depression and all of that kind of stuff. And that was like a place I had to get to as well. And that was like one of those first sort of like healing moments, like deep healing moments. And I think when you have those, at least for me, I've had several, I could call out a few, but when I had a moment like that, I would really break down. And that breakdown was something that I had to just release. It felt like such a release to like weep for instance, a younger version of myself that wanted to do X and didn't get to do it because X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to get like into a lot of details, because while I do love to get personal, that's a real personal one, but just trying to like have that moment of like letting yourself feel the pain. If you don't feel it, you can't heal it. If you don't reveal it to yourself, if you don't let yourself go there, you're never going to find that safety in yourself, because you have to feel safe in your own skin. And once you find that, guys, once you find that, you can dream big and go for those goals. And then as far as strategy goes, I've got something for you guys. So I talked about how much I love Miss Rachel Hollis. And she has a wonderful practice. I'm just gonna scoot. I'm sliding, you guys, because I'm on pillows and I'm sliding. She has a wonderful practice that I'm going to share with you guys today. And again, not an ad. I'm not that cool. I don't know Rachel. I have met Rachel, but I don't know Rachel. So this is not an ad. This is just something I like. She has a concept called Start Today. And I use this journal. This is not the first time I've used this journal. And you don't even need to like buy one of her journals to do this. Even she says that in all of her stuff. You can just do this in a notebook. But what it is you start with, so in the beginning, she has this whole thing about kind of like I talked about, creating that vision for who you want to be and then breaking that down into a few goals. And specifically in her practice, it's 10. So 10 goals that you want to achieve. So the inside is similar, kind of looks like this. You start your day with gratitude. You write down 5 things that you're grateful for. And then you write down those 10 goals, and you write down those same 10 goals every single day. And actually, you guys, I like really recently shifted one of my goals because for a while I was writing, I launched my podcast. And now that I've actually started, my next goal was I have 1,000 YouTube subscribers. So if you just want to hit that like and subscribe button and help me reach that next goal, I would love you forever. So I write down my goals every day. So I still have, like I said, I want to be a cycle bar instructor. I'm working on a certification to be like an official life coach, to work on like mindset coaching and doing something like that. So I can do group workshops and things like that, maybe some one-on-one coaching with some confidence and some actual clout and certification there. I'm wanting to build this vibrant health and wellness community. Again, you guys, the Facebook group. Every week I'm in that group. I'm giving a lot of articles, a lot of resources. We're doing a video. We're talking about stuff, the blog post, everything drops in there. So if you are at all interested in what I've got to say and you're digging this, you're loving the chats, you're feeling my vibe, check out the Facebook group. And it's funny because I'm not even like a Facebook person. Like I don't even like use my Facebook, but I'm super active in building my own like Facebook community just for you guys. So I put a lot of effort into it. If you're digging it, check that out. Just stuff like that. I really want to write a book. I want to finish the Flying Pig Half Marathon. I talked about that. I do want to speak fluent German. I have been working on my German for like 2 years, you guys. And I think I could confidently go to Germany and like get around, but it's like, I can't carry a conversation. That's really difficult. Hearing it and understanding it quickly enough to like respond, that's still that's the barrier. But I use Duolingo and I work on it. So anyway, this process is how I started achieving the goals. And when I say that I wrote down, I healed my childhood trauma and found inner peace, it was in one of these that I did that. Every single day I wrote that down until I finally felt like, oh my God. I looked back at the year and a half, almost 2 years, and I was like, I did it. I was like, I'm not dragged down by the depression anymore. The things that used to bother me don't bother me. I'm like, I see myself growing. I don't respond to triggers the way that I used to. I don't freak out on people the way that I used to. I'm not walking around angry and resentful all the time. It's like, I looked back at that gain and I saw that I had met the goal. And then once you meet the goal, there's like a process that you like scratch it out, write a new goal, like you achieve the goal, and then you're considered an STJ dream catcher. You can hashtag that in like Instagram and stuff like that, which is always cute and exciting because everybody loves a little gram moment. But doing stuff like that to reach those goals. I think another thing that really helped me with goals and with consistency. So just this last year, at the end of last year, I did something that I called the 90-day slay. I love a little challenge moment. I've actually tried like the 75 hard challenge before, tore my meniscus doing it, totally different story, but I love a challenge. So I did one for myself where I just sort of took kind of some of the principles behind 75 hard. It was 5 things for 90 days that I was like, I'm going to do these for 90 days and I'm going to give myself a little metallic star on like a little calendar that I hung up just on our bulletin board, like in the kitchen. And it was like, work out or move my body in any kind of way. Even if it's just like walking the dogs, maybe it's cycle bar, maybe it's weights. It was like, I'm going to do a thing. So doing that, drinking water, and then it was like reading a book, doing some kind of spiritual practice like meditation or journaling, and then no sugar. So I did like no processed sugar, no cookies, no cakes, and I did this, guys, going into October, November, and December. So if I can do it, and I did it. If I can do it, you can do it too. And that, something about the stars and putting the stickers really helped me to get consistent. And I've posted about that before. I've shared about it in the group. If you would like to know more about that, I'd love to share it with you. I'm going to do another challenge probably at the beginning of the summer, so stay tuned for that. I'm definitely going to post about it like on Instagram, on social, put things in the group, invite people to join if you're trying to accomplish something or if you want to create a goal for yourself. I also put a free calendar. Like I did a habit tracker calendar very similar to what I created. Now my thing was like big. It was like 18 by 24. I ripped out like a piece from my sketch pad and made like a huge calendar for this. But I offered just like a regular print out calendar at the end of the Master Your Mindset, the complete guide to mastering your mindset PDF. I will also link that in the show notes if you're interested in checking out the guide that I put together for mastering your mindset, getting in touch with the process, getting in touch with believing in yourself, and getting out of feeling stuck and into feeling like, yes, the fuck I can, because yes, you can. And as I always like to say, if you believe you can't, then you won't. We talked about it at the beginning of this conversation. If you don't think you can, if you're telling yourself at the top of the goal that you can't do this, this isn't for me, there's no way somebody like me doesn't do this, there's no way, I've got all these excuses, then you're not gonna do it. You're never gonna do it. If you keep making excuses, if you keep telling yourself that you can't, then you can't. That's the story you're telling yourself. But if you tell yourself that you can, and you start seeking possibility and asking the universe, God, something bigger than yourself, whatever you believe in, how, then you can. I'm right here, you guys. I'm an ordinary person. I'm just your average woman living in the suburbs, working a 9-to-5 job. And all I did was work on that mindset. And it started with that mental health work. And I got that in place. And I said, how then do I go for these goals? How then? Give me the creative possibilities. Let things show up for me and I will reach for them. And again, I'm super spiritual, so I'm talking God, universe, spirit, like all the angels, guides, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's all the same to me. I'm asking for that. I'm reaching for the things. And this stuff shows up, guys. When you believe in yourself and you start taking those small right actions and you trust that process, that's how you get to the goal. So it's February. It's like the middle of February. What is going on? We're already like well into 2024. Things are underway. And if you're feeling like your resolutions are fizzling out, I'm inviting you right now to step back, renew your ideas around your goals, and just start asking yourself, like, what kind of small right actions can I start taking today? Like, what can I do tomorrow, today, right now, to go towards the goal, whatever the goal is. And if it's running a marathon, get off your couch and walk in place for like 5 minutes. I don't know. Ask yourself how. Know that you can, and you can. I believe in you, and I want you to believe in you. All right, that's all I've got, guys. That's all it's going to be until next time. I love you. Thanks for coming by.